if you mean by global capitalism, the compass of a social market economy model, I think under different terms, because the Anglo-Saxons don't use the word social market economy model, but that concept and compass, I think, will stay with us for a long time. Whether more countries will follow on that route and implement that system is difficult to say, because we have, I think we have two challenges. The first one is that in many or in all of our countries, the model is not done in a perfect manner. I mean, the markets don't function perfectly. The governments provide public goods and services, but not in a perfect manner, some better, some less good. And we have new challenges that arise all the time. The climate change challenges is probably the most, apart from the military, I mean, that we don't hit each other over the head and kill each other, thanks to our prosperity, because, we would all be dead very quickly if we started hitting each other over the head today, given the degree of specialization of our economies. Nobody knows how to farm anymore. We are way too many people and so on. So that, I think, the global capitalism, you call it, or the widespread application of a social market economy type model has, I think, already helped reduce the threat of one of the most formidable, or one of the worst human sufferings through war. I really think that our economic model has helped prevent more wars. And when you look at where the wars take place, then it's usually very local ones, and typically in poorer countries, unfortunately, where it's actually still possible to fight such wars. So that, I think, as we get richer, the incentives to engage in war falls. The newest really super formidable challenge is probably climate change, where in a way we all globally, or at least 60-70% of the global economy have to cooperate to master that. And there it's using, to my mind, market instruments, the capitalist model, to master this in the best way. But you need policymakers and national and international collaboration to do this. The market alone clearly will not solve this. And but the market provides instruments that can help us solve it in the least, so to speak, with the least trade-offs. Because so that I think. And then, the pandemic shows us that we also have to keep an eye on some other things. We have become extremely vulnerable for certain events like pandemics, where the risk is also that the baby is thrown out with the bathwater, because kind of more state-controlling systems like China maybe find it easier to deal with challenges like the pandemic, because they find for them it's easier to limit individual freedom to an extent that it prevents the pandemic from spreading, or it can help eradicate it. And so the market economy model, with the political system attached that we have of individual freedom and autonomy of consumers and so on, is not best at dealing with all challenges. And it is conceivable that people think, okay, it is much more important to solve the pandemic than to preserve our individual freedom and the market economy, and we allow the government to lock us all up. And one of the worst conclusions after this pandemic would be exactly that people see, the Chinese were better able to deal with this, so maybe they have the better economic model. And it's because it's not capitalism that, it's the combination of the market economy of capitalism with our individual freedom that makes us less able to deal with it. So it is possible that our system, we all say COVID is the worst crisis in a century, and that's true economically, but it could be much worse, because the death rate from the infection could be not 1%, but 10 or 50. And then things would really collapse. And then afterwards, what conclusions would we draw from that? So I think we are actually quite lucky that we got a pandemic like this one, where we can kind of still maintain a system that preserves the individual freedom and allows to also use the market economy model to solve it. And I hope this will be the conclusion afterwards. But you see already from the discussions that we are leading about more role of the state, more public spending, that drawing the right conclusions is not so obvious. I mean, are our medical systems really underfunded, or is the money just poorly targeted? Is it market failure or government failure? And if it's both, or if it's mainly government failure, then how can we improve the functioning of our governments? And if the government was the problem of at the root of the crisis, more spending, more government may not solve this. And it has other trade-offs, indebtedness. So we might stumble and tumble into the next debt crisis, given how the numbers are developing. So, and then if we do that, thanks to COVID, and then we have problems in Europe that we might, for the time being, we have found solutions. But there is no certainty that our economic model will become the global economic model. For economic reasons, because we may not be able to handle certain problems well, and we may not draw the right conclusions. And then we have system competition, where leaders of other approaches may also invest time and energy to preserve their privileges, as dictators or whatever, because they want to eliminate a competitor. I mean, our system is a competitor. And we are not competing in a fair political global market, but we are competing in a market where some countries may invest a lot of money to kind of undermine our systems. So in short, my answer is no, there is no predetermined path, but it speaks for a close and good analysis of what, so to speak, successful systems are, and an alertness by our governments to improve for the sake of their own survival. But individual politicians, of course, have very little incentive to do that. But as a society, we have a huge incentive to do so. So, and that requires, of course, good analysis and a good historic thinking also, which is sometimes a bit neglected. We kind of operate on a day-to-day basis, and instead of kind of taking a bit the longer view. But yeah, I'm still optimistic that, and in a way, the fact that a system like the Chinese one, which adopted a lot of market mechanisms and incentives to be successful and survive and make its population better off. And in many countries, this has been also on the transition then to more free societies. I mean, if you look at Germany in the 19th century, I mean, it had rudimentary elements of democracy, but it was not a politically free system. And we went through terrible turmoil in the following decades. But I think there is a chance that over time, our market economy system will prevail more.